Okay, Dad, you're back in London, back in my house, flat. Today I
The
was hoping
promised land.
the promised land. Today I was hoping we could do Boris Johnson. Our recent video of Hillary has gone absolutely mental, and following that on, I thought we'd do another politician. In our Kia video, in our Kia Starmer video, you referred to quite a few PMs as pound shop PMs. Would you refer to Boris Johnson as a pound shop PM?
I think that would be pushing it a little bit. I mean, I was really thinking about Liz Truss,
Okay.
who was a kind of a ridiculous tenure as PM that lasted a matter of weeks. Boris Johnson, whatever you think of him, he did get a majority, and you have to respect democracy. And also, he was perfectly nice to me during the shoot, which was in 2007 when he was running for mayor.
Okay.
And he had offices at County Hall. And I just remember him arriving on his bike. And, it was the kind of Boris Johnson shtick that you'd expect. But also, I'm going to be reluctant to kind of be too hard on him because aside from him being perfectly, he had that veneer of charm that you get when you go to Eton. I also used to have worked on a number of shoots and interviews with his sister, Rachel, who, in fact, when she was editor of The Lady, she was keen to use my pictures of the Duchess of Devonshire. And I remember we photographed Richard Rogers, the architect, with his wife, Ruth, who ran the River Cafe, this sort of very fancy. It was actually a New Labour kind of hangout, apparently, this restaurant in Hammersmith by the river. And then during the pandemic, I had the good fortune to sort of break my duck in terms of lack of jobs with a commission from the Times to photograph Stanley on Exmoor.
Johnson.
Dad.
Yeah.
And they're all very charming and very professional. As a photographer, you just want to be able to do your job. I don't have a bad opinion of any of them in terms of in the context of a photo shoot, because they enabled me to get my pictures, and they weren't too sort of difficult to work with. They were professional.
Yeah, and that was the main kind of gripe when it came to Hillary, is it made your job difficult.
Absolutely.
Nothing on her as a person, I guess.
Yeah,
although
I mean,
you were quite worked up in that video, but
you kind of that's what I do. I'm there to kind of. I mean, I always say that I want to get a definitive picture of whoever it is, and as long as they give me a fair crack at the whip, I'll photograph the great and the good and the infamous.
okay.
It's all grist to the mill.
Maybe we could give an example of the great, good, and infamous, one for each.
Well, we can do that. Yeah.
Go on. So,
well, off the top of my head.
Off the top of your head, who's the great?
Well, we've done a video on I really like Bob Geldof, or Jamie. It was always great working with Jamie Oliver. The good, more tricky, really. There are people. I'd have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, what about infamous?
Well, I don't want to kind of
Jimmy Savile,
yeah.
R. Kelly.
Yeah, I mean that genuinely.
Evil.
After due process to be found to be kind of monstrous figures. Yeah. So I don't think it's controversial to state that, really.
Okay, cool. So anyway, back to Boris, Bojo. So it was in London?
It was in London. He was running for mayor, and no one thought he had a chance. I think, it was deemed unlikely that you'd have a conservative mayor of a major city like London, which is sort of politically leans to the left. But he did have a lot of kind of charm and energy, and he'd been on Have I Got News for You? And so the general population sort of, he had a sort of clownish demeanour, and I think he sort of went under the radar. People didn't see him as kind of a dangerous demagogue. They just sort of saw him as an ineffectual sort of clown. There's a sort of clip on Have I Got News for You where he was playing rugby with what looked like a team of little kids, and he was sort of bowling one of them over. He was kind of a ridiculous figure. who'd made his name sort of writing kind of invective for the Telegraph about how terrible the European Union was and Brussels and so on.
Okay.
And he certainly was able to kind of determine take the reading of the temperature of the general population and kind of give them what they wanted. And he was a populist.
So why do you think? How do you think he was voted in as London mayor? If London being a traditionally left-leaning city.
Well, it was an extraordinary result, and I think it probably meant that the Conservative Party fell a bit in love with him, and they realised that I mean, they're above anything else. They want to win, and I don't think anyone really, a bit like Trump, perhaps, they didn't really question. They didn't look at the red flags or the fine details that some people might. They put those things to one side, and they thought he can win us the election, and he did.
I referred to Alan Sugar, our Alan Sugar video, as the UK's Trump. Maybe this is better suited.
Yeah. I think he always. I think Boris liked Trump and liked his kind of modus operandi. I think he was kind of somebody that had this kind of energy and also a kind of need for attention and the limelight and maybe a British Trump.
Okay, so now onto the photography, what we're here for. You arrived in London, he arrived on his bike. I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, and incidentally, what we should do is perhaps do a little Zoom call, which we can cut to, with my assistant on that shoot, because I phoned him earlier and he's more than happy to talk about what he remembers from the shoot.
So this particular assistant's Chris.
Yeah, I love
Great.
Chris.
Yeah, we love Chris.
Yeah, great guy, and you would have been a little kid, and he
Yeah.
was always nice to you, wasn't he, when
He's
he came
known
around the
me
house?
since I was a baby.
Yeah, and he's talented photographer in his own right, and he's really got a lot going on. So it'd be nice that we can chat to him and ask him what he.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a video with him more focused around his work at some point too.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna ring Chris. I'll just WhatsApp him. Technical stuff. Get your video on there, Chris. It's paused. Here he is. Here's the great man. Oh, thanks for doing this, Chris.
No worries, no worries.
So tell me, what are your memories of Boris Johnson on all those years ago in 2007?
Right. Well, I was thinking about it before. Was he mayor or was he just about to run for mayor at the time?
He was running for mayor. That was the thing.
Yeah. So, well, we turned up and we were waiting around for him, and there was a few texts back and forth, I think, with whoever was doing his press in the town. Was it town hall somewhere on South Bank?
Yeah.
And he basically like turned up on his push bike, sort of looking like what is now his trademark sort of fluster and bluster. And his hair just like all over the shop. And I remember we just thought like, just like a clown. Like,
Who is this bozo?
Well, yeah, it just had this just general air of like unorganized and just like didn't really know what was going on, not living in the real world. He arrived on his bike, and then we photographed him in like this empty sort of room. And I remember, I think it must have been some sort of campaign materials, and it was like a silhouette of him with like his hair looking a bit sort of. I'm saying this as my hair looks a bit dodgy.
Oh, you look lovely, Chris.
But it was like a silhouette of him. Now, when I look back at that, this campaign materials, it's obviously like there was an awareness about his personal brand and his and we kind of like left sort of thinking, well, what a bozo, but it was kind of, he was already harnessing this sort of idea of him being sort of slightly wild and wacky.
You're right. I've forgotten about that, because they basically had a kind of like a silhouette, didn't they? It was a sort of a side profile or something with this kind of buffoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The head bit sort of like out of place and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was always it. When I look back on it, reflect on it now, it was like all of that is an act, and it was an act then, but like it wasn't really sort of well established. So we sort of seeing it, and I remember us like leaving, just going like, "Who the fuck is he?" Like, who,
Yeah, no, it
we were
was.
like laughing about it,
Yeah.
going like, "He's a joke. How's he gonna like run London?" Like,
Yeah, yeah, and then I don't know if you remember, but we put him on or I stood on a light box, didn't I? And I used the ring light with the eye in the background. Do you remember those pictures?
yes. Well, I presumed it was like because that was like pro photo. That was one of your
Mm,
because you got like a pro photo head and pack.
mm,
And that kit was in that really heavy black box. I
yeah,
remember that.
yeah, very
Um,
heavy.
um, yeah, and he stood on that, and then I didn't realize it was ring flash. I thought it was just like I don't know. I thought it was just
Yeah,
maybe spill killer.
I had a ring flash that I plugged into that Pro Photo battery pack.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and we were in this wood paneled room. And I remember doing the pictures next to like just with the available light next to the window.
mm, mm,
But like the wood panel room just soaks up any other light, so it
mm,
kind of almost acts as like a negative fill on that side. So
mm,
you've got that sort of like half and half lighting almost on
mm,
some.
mm.
Uh,
It increased
but
it sort of increased the contrast of the light, didn't it? It worked
yeah,
really well. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So it's like same as not putting like a panel there. It's sort of
yeah.
that yeah.
Now, Chris, I know you're a very busy man, so I won't take up any more of your time. But do you have any final sort of finishing memories of the shoot or the day?
Well, yeah, mainly just that we left sort of thinking, because we weren't sort of super aware. I was aware of him because he had said something disparaging about Scousers.
He'd written something.
Route one, don't mess with the Scousers.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
But it was like sort of I was aware of him because of that. But I remember just thinking, what a joke! Like what a joker!
Yeah.
What a clown!
And
Like,
also, you being from the northeast, you know, Scousers are kind of like your spiritual brethren, aren't they?
kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah. I identify more with the Scotch.
yeah. The Scotch. All right. On that bombshell, I'll let you go. Thanks, Chris.
Right. Cheers, mate.
All right,
Bye.
we'll be in touch soon. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was good. So let's delve into a little bit what was said. So you started off in his office, is that correct? Or...
Yeah. So Boris had taken over. He'd sort of managed. It was quite a coup, really. This building right by the Thames, this sort of old, kind of grand, muscular building, County Hall, and he'd managed to get offices in there from which to run his campaign. And it's a fantastic location. But as I said, as Chris pointed out, he was pretty disheveled, and he just sort of, he was late. And but I got my pictures. I got two different setups. I think it was for Newsweek, and as I always point out, you have to get a lot of variety. It's good if you can get two different looks from the same setup. One that could be used in the contents page, and then one that could be used inside the magazine across a spread.
Cool. So you're in his office, and Chris mentioned the wood soaked up a lot of the light.
There were really dark panelled walls made of this sort of dark wood, mahogany, or some such material.
Rich
and
wood.
yeah, really kind of soaked up the light. And so, but then there was a little bit of daylight. I mean,
So how would you deal with that?
well, actually, this is a good case in point. I mean, I'm always looking for interesting light, and this is really interesting light right now. This is exactly what I talk about. There's a light as the sun is reflecting off a building about 100 meters away, and the light is reflecting back, and you can sort of see it in my coming from that side. And then we've used our LED light in order to sort of provide a bit of fill. And quite often you're looking for somewhere that has some interesting light, that preferably has some architectural features in which you can put someone, and then it's all ready to go. It's a ready-made.
Okay, so maybe I'll just pan over or can we take a pic with your phone? Would you take
Yeah,
a picture of that?
yeah,
to
I
add
can
on?
do that.
For the viewers, here is the building reflecting the light back through the window.
Yeah.
And then if we pan to the other side, Dad.
And then if I sort of look, I'll take a picture of myself.
And then onto the other side, we've got a makeshift mattress reflector.
Yeah, we've got Fred's mattress we put on one side, and we've put the LED into it's ludicrous really,
Okay.
into a sheet that's been tossed over the top of a duvet over the
Okay.
top. You've got to do what you've got to do. I mean, basically, quite often I do these shoots, and it's not like an advertising shoot where you have loads of time. It's an editorial shoot, so it doesn't really matter if that mattress is balanced, and any minute it could just fall over. You know, the light could suddenly change, a cloud could go in front of the sun. But that's the wonderful thing, thinking on your feet and improvising. So the pictures I did inside the County Hall building were all about daylight. I might have used a reflector because the light was so sort of contrasty because it was so dark in there, and you had this light coming through the window. The picture I did with the London Eye is completely contrived. For that, I used a ring flash, and
So you placed his head in the center of the London Eye, and then classic ring flash.
yeah, it's
But
sort
I
of
remember, so we've
like an
made it
angel, like a halo.
like a halo. But I remember
To
we
paraphrase Beyonce.
Oh, good old Beyonce.
Yeah,
So
dad joke.
so we made a TikTok of this like a year ago, a year and a half. So I am half aware of this shoot, and I know one of the pictures the ring flash didn't go off.
Well, this is the thing. This is why people like working on film, because you get happy accidents. You get things that you hadn't anticipated. And in this instance, it wasn't shooting digitally, but you know, for various reasons, I was maybe working too quickly. One of the flashes didn't sync, and the flash didn't go off, and so his face was completely black. And because his blonde shock of hair was so light, it was correctly exposed, and it had a rich exposure, and it meant that his kind of brand, what makes Boris so iconic, that kind of shock of hair, was all that you had, and you had this black where the face was, and actually it's quite an interesting picture now that so much has happened in his life, because it sort of reveals that we thought you know, you can project onto that dark kind of black hole of nothingness whatever you think Boris Johnson is, and he's many things to many people. To some people, he's a complete
Satan.
bête noir, yeah, absolutely Satan, and still probably a significant proportion of the country think he's great and probably would have him back.
Yeah. So
what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's not going to get into politics on this
No,
channel.
no,
but,
absolutely.
But yeah, I agree. I think that's the best picture, and you so often say that like the silhouette is a good thing to play with.
Yeah, I mean, that was at the time. The picture was never used, obviously, and it's just sometimes you just go back over things, and something that actually went completely wrong, the flash not going off, can be your friend. You know, you've inadvertently underexposed a picture. You would never underexpose it to that extent, just expose for his hair and then not allow any light to go on him, but it actually does work.
Yeah.
You know.
Cool. All right, that's good. I think. Anything else you want to add for Boris?
Have we covered everything? I think we've covered everything, haven't we?
Cool.
I love the Chris bit, could be really good.
Shout out to Chris. He's a great guy.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.